Some of the best horror films have leaned into the sci-fi genre. This year, these two mixes of horror and sci-fi stood out more than most. This is M.L. Miller Fright's Best in Horror Countdown 2022 through 2023. Counting down the best in horror within the window of October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023.
Number 19.
No One Will Save You was released on September 22nd, 2023. It's streaming on Hulu. It's directed and written by Brian Duffield. A young woman named Bryn, played by Caitlin Dever, is alienated from her community after she was involved in a freak accident as a child that took the life of one of her best friends. She now lives alone in her mother's home. One night she finds her home has been broken into and is not prepared for who or what it is that has invaded her home. After accidentally killing one of the invaders, she finds out that she is not the only one who was visited in the night. Okay, enough vagary. It's been advertised and spoiled that the home invaders are gray aliens. But with UAPs and UFOs being all over the news, you can bet your sweet bippy that this isn't going to be the last UFO alien movie you're going to be seeing in the coming months. Brian Duffield was the man behind Spontaneous and was the writer behind such notable genre films as The Babysitter 1 and 2, Love and Monsters, and Underwater. So while I've liked quite a bit of those, No One Will Save You seems to be the one that's going to make him a household name from this point forward. On a very small scale and a meager budget, Duffield manages to deliver quite a powerful little sci-fi horror movie, incorporating elements from some of the biggest sci-fi horror films ever made. Honestly, there isn't a big-budget sci-fi film about UFOs or aliens that this film doesn't borrow from. There are whiffs of Fire in the Sky, hints of Nope, nods to Signs, lifts from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, tips of the hat to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, riffs on A Quiet Place, and even homages to E.T. No One Will Save You may not be the most original in presenting this type of UFO phenomena, but it doesn't make it any less of a movie. What distinguishes this movie from the others, other than seamlessly incorporating elements of all of the aforementioned movies, is that it has a strong emotional core and an interesting protagonist. Despite the fact that only about 5 words are uttered in the entire film, the movie fleshes out Bryn's character very well in the opening moments through her day-to-day actions as an outcast in her town. She longs for human interaction, but then again seems quite content being on her own, away from the rest of the world. Duffield makes it very clear that Bryn herself is an alien in her own town even before the spaceships show up. Caitlin Dever does a fantastic job of making you care for her plight, even though she hardly utters a word. That takes a bit of talent in its own right. Now I have to admit the fact that she breathes so loudly when she's trying to be quiet got to be a bit annoying for me. A deaf alien from across the room could have heard her huffing and puffing while crouching around the corner. Still, the tragedy that occurred with Bryn in her youth and the pain she carries is communicated all the way through. Another thing that makes No One Will Save You stand out is that this is a damn good-looking movie. The effects are astounding. After seeing some awful CG this year in so-called blockbusters from the biggest studios, it baffles me how seamless these aliens look. Not only that, but the other effects, such as the possessed humans, the billowing clouds containing the spacecrafts, and the spacecrafts themselves, are downright jaw-dropping. While films like Close Encounters and E.T. delivered great effects for their time, and some of the later ones were well done, this might be one of the best-looking UFO movies made to date. I love the variety of the aliens. While all of them are similar in shape, the sizes and functions of each are wonderfully creative and reflective of alien lore. I also love the way the motivation of the aliens is vague. Yes, this seems like some kind of invasion, but it also seems as if they're trying to understand Bryn and even might be friendly at times. Then again, they randomly feel aggressive and threatening. This unpredictability only adds to the unknown factor to a species we simply cannot comprehend. And I like that added detail to Duffield's alien tale. No One Will Save You is basically a cat and mouse chase for the bulk of the movie, and it successfully maintains the tension all the way through, with Bryn fighting tooth and nail to escape this invasive species. This was an extremely physical role, and Dever takes quite a few lumps along the way. While there is a lot of running and hiding, Duffield manages to make every scene feel unique and full of suspense. Yes, Deaver is not very imposing. At times she looks like she's barely over 4 feet tall. Still, this isn't a movie that gives her superpowers or unnatural luck. Bryn is just scrappy, and that seems to be all she needs to survive. So let's talk about that ending. And if you're not interested in spoilers, just move on now. The ending where Bryn is happily dancing throughout the street with others who seem to be living a happy life, blissfully ignorant of the alien overlords hovering above. One might think that despite the fight, Bryn was assimilated like the rest of the townsfolk. Or more likely, because she was such an outcast in her community and longed for such a simpler life, that the aliens left her alone and didn't possess her, and she's simply living her best life, having come to terms with the sins of her past. Like the best of films, it's open to interpretation depending on the type of film you want it to be. Sure, we've seen the aliens rooting through the refrigerator, we've seen aliens leaping from roofs, the lights in the sky, and the ships emerging from the clouds, but you've never seen it look this good and framed in such a tension-laden film. Duffield has delivered a wonderful little surprise in No One Will Save You, and having seen that he can capably ape some of the most iconic UFO films in cinematic history, I'm eager to see what he has up his sleeve next. Here's one I got to see right before I finished my list of the best of the year. It's a good one, and barely missed the main list, but it's definitely worth mentioning here. Significant Other was released on October 6th, 2022. It's streaming on Paramount Plus and available on demand. It's directed and written by Dan Berk and Robert Olsen. Ruth, played by It Follows' Mecca Moore, and her boyfriend Harry, played by The Office's Jake Lacey, are a seemingly happy couple on their way for a hiking vacation. Unbeknownst to them, before they arrive, a meteor of sorts comes crashing through the atmosphere, and the two parties are destined to collide deep in the Pacific Northwest. There are a lot of films like Significant Other, leading me to believe that going hiking with a gal you dig and asking them to marry you while looking at the gorgeous landscape around is something that is quite popular with young folks these days. I get the sentimentality of it, but the first signs of horror that often occurs is that though one might believe they know the relationship well, that might not be the case for both people in the relationship. It's this uncomfortable scene that hits you on a gut level as expectations are shattered and the first signs of something going wrong is evident. Significant Other does a good job of tapping into this uncomfortable feeling of embarrassment and disappointment, mainly due to the strong performances by the two lead actors, Monroe and Lacey, who are front and center for the bulk of the movie. Monroe especially has a movie star quality that allows her to sink into any role, no matter how gritty or dirty the situation is, and comes out looking elegant. Monroe's Ruth challenges that stigma, though here, in many ways, as she is cast in a not-so-flattering light. Still, it's hard not to love every minute she's on screen. Lacey is a fresh face. He's a typical rugged type with a boyish and optimistic face that helps make you root for him as his good intentions shine through even when the trip begins to go downhill. Again, the actors are in the entire movie, mainly interacting with each other, so the fact that these two are likable goes a long way in maintaining the interest. Once the otherworldly stuff starts popping up, it intensifies the horror to fantastical levels. It works because both characters who thought they knew each other so well are given reason to doubt all of that. First with a botched proposal, and then with the audition of space aliens. Things ratchet up quickly from uncomfortable to downright life-threatening. I'm trying not to give away too many of the twists this story takes, as it's fun to discover them on your own. Just know that everything is not as it seems, and the ground is not as stable as both of these hikers believe. This leads to some really strong moments of tension, with a lot of moments hinging on what the hikers know and what the aliens know, and when both parties know it. Filmmakers Dan Berk and Robert Olsen juggle these complex relationships and growing tension skillfully, taking into consideration all of the conflicting points of views going on. The use of the desolate and wooded setting really helps by highlighting the sense that these two hikers are all alone in this vast forest with no one to turn to but themselves. Once the aliens show their hand, it's done in a way that I don't know if I found it to be as interesting as they think it is. I love the build-up to the reveal, and bought into the tense moments of the hikers fleeing through the forest, but when the aliens do reveal themselves, they're presented in a rather aloof manner. This is because the aliens are getting used to the new situation, assimilating with the people around them, but the casual way which they interact with the humans lessen the threat a skosh for me, cutting the threat off at the knees. Still, I enjoyed the cat and mouse that goes on pretty much from the half-hour point until the end of the film. I hope I did a decent job of protecting the secrets of Significant Other. It delves into how much you really know about your fellow man, especially those you feel closest to, and that theme remains present even when the aliens arrive. The strong performances by the two leads make it easier to get into this one. I doubt lesser actors would have been able to pull off the intricate feelings at play here. I was thoroughly entertained, but the familiarity of the way the aliens interacted with the species they are intent on conquering lessened the intensity of it all to make it a completely successful blend of horror and sci-fi for me. But despite all that, I loved all the stuff going on with Significant Other. As always, feel free to agree, disagree, or how about you play along at home and give me your own picks for your favorite horror movies. It's October, so let's talk horror. Come back tomorrow for the next level in the Best in Horror Countdown. Be sure to hit all of those pertinent bells and whistles down below, and you'll never miss a post. Happy Halloween, folks.